Imagine a land of endless forests and wild rivers, untouched yet brimming with potential. A handful of colonies would rise from obscurity, their people driven by ambition, conflict, and survival. But how did a fledgling nation, torn by revolution and debt, transform into the world's wealthiest power, almost against all odds? The story begins in the early 17th century when European settlers arrived along the Atlantic seaboard seeking opportunity and religious freedom. Jamestown, founded in 1607, and Plymouth in 1620 were the seeds of what would become 13 British colonies. Life was harsh. Disease, starvation, and conflict with indigenous nations tested every colonist. Yet these early communities laid critical foundations: agriculture, trade networks, and self-governance that would later define American resilience. By the mid-1700s, colonies had diversified economies. In the north, shipbuilding, fishing, and emerging industries flourished, while the southern plantations relied on tobacco, rice, and eventually cotton. Wealth was uneven, and tensions simmered between the colonies and the British Crown. Taxation without representation became more than a slogan. It became a rallying cry, igniting a revolution that would reshape a continent. Amid this turbulence, remarkable individuals emerged. Visionaries like Benjamin Franklin experimented with science and diplomacy, while merchants and farmers adapted to survive in a volatile world. Their ambition was mirrored by a collective desire for independence, a belief that they could govern themselves and control their economic destiny. These early struggles forged not only political identity, but also a practical understanding of commerce, credit, and trade that would underpin future wealth. Life was not idyllic, yet in adversity, the colonies discovered innovation. Roads, ports, and informal banking systems sprang up, facilitating commerce. Ideas of property, investment, and risk-taking began to take root. A nation was learning, often painfully, how to thrive economically while building the institutions that would endure for centuries. The spark of revolution was only the beginning. As the colonies fought for freedom, they faced challenges that would test their unity, their leadership, and their very survival. The struggle for freedom would become the crucible in which America's economic power was first forged.
War had arrived on the doorstep of 13 fragile colonies. The air was thick with uncertainty, yet opportunity whispered in every battlefield and negotiation. How did a group of farmers and tradesmen facing the might of the British Empire not only win independence, but lay the groundwork for unimaginable wealth in a world ruled by empires? The American Revolution, beginning in 1775, was more than a battle for political freedom. It was a crucible for economic transformation. Colonial militias, poorly equipped yet fiercely determined, clashed with one of the most powerful military forces on Earth. The cost of war was immense: lives lost, towns destroyed, and economies disrupted. Yet, within these struggles, the seeds of innovation and self-reliance sprouted. Merchants turned blockade into advantage, finding new trade routes and methods to supply troops. Local industries expanded, producing weapons, uniforms, and provisions that previously depended on Britain. Every skirmish revealed the colony's capacity to organize, adapt, and overcome scarcity. Farmers and artisans became essential to sustaining the war effort, learning the art of production, supply chains, and resource management under extreme pressure. The 1783 Treaty of Paris marked victory, but it also revealed a fragile economic reality. The new nation faced staggering debt, fragmented markets, and the challenge of uniting 13 diverse states with competing interests. Yet, the American spirit had been tested and honed. Leaders like Alexander Hamilton envisioned a strong financial system, introducing banks, debt management, and public credit that would attract both domestic and foreign investment. Simultaneously, the West beckoned. Land acquisition and settlement promised resources, commerce, and mobility.
The concept of property and entrepreneurship became deeply intertwined with the idea of freedom. Americans learned that wealth could grow through labor, risk, and strategic planning, not just inheritance. These formative years, marked by hardship and resilience, instilled a culture that valued innovation, adaptability, and long-term vision. Victory had been won, but survival alone was not enough. The nation now faced a far greater test: how to transform independence into prosperity, and how to turn a fragile, war-torn economy into the foundation for becoming the richest country in the world. The war was over, yet the real battle had just begun. How could a fledgling nation, still scarred by conflict and debt, harness its vast lands, diverse peoples, and raw ambition to become an economic powerhouse? The choices made in these fragile years would echo across centuries, shaping the fortunes of millions. In the years following independence, America confronted the monumental task of nation building. The Articles of Confederation initially provided a loose framework, but economic instability and fragmented authority soon exposed its weaknesses. States levied their own taxes, currencies fluctuated wildly, and trade between regions was inconsistent. Inflation and debt haunted both the public and private sectors. Yet these challenges forced leaders and citizens alike to innovate, experiment, and adapt. The creation of the U.S. Constitution in 1787 was a turning point. It established a stronger federal government capable of regulating commerce, raising revenue, and providing the stability necessary for economic growth. Hamilton, as the first Secretary of the Treasury, implemented bold financial strategies: a national bank, assumption of state debts, and the establishment of public credit. These policies not only stabilized the economy, but also fostered investor confidence, laying the foundation for a financial system that could support industry, infrastructure, and trade. Meanwhile, technological innovation and industry began to accelerate. Eli Whitney's cotton gin revolutionized agriculture in the South, while northern factories started producing textiles, tools, and machinery. Canals, roads, and later railways connected markets, reducing isolation and creating national economic integration. Immigrants brought labor, skills, and entrepreneurial energy, fueling urban growth and industrial expansion. This period also saw the rise of the American frontier. Land speculation, farming, and resource extraction offered new paths to wealth. The notion of the self-made man became a cultural ideal. Hard work, ingenuity, and calculated risk were increasingly seen as gateways to prosperity. Communities learned to leverage both local resources and global trade networks, setting a precedent for the economic dynamism that would define the nation. The groundwork had been laid, yet challenges lurked on the horizon. Industrialization, social change, and expanding global influence would test America's ability to sustain growth. The nation stood at the threshold of transformation, from a modest republic into a global economic titan.
Factories roared, railways stretched across endless plains, and cities surged with life. But behind the smoke and steel, a quiet revolution was reshaping the nation. How did America, once a scattered group of struggling states, harness technology, labor, and ambition to leap onto the global stage and create wealth on a scale the world had never seen? The 19th century brought an industrial awakening. Steam engines, mechanized factories, and mass production transformed daily life. Textiles, steel, and machinery became the backbone of a growing economy, while railroads connected raw materials, factories, and markets like never before. Entrepreneurs such as Cornelius Vanderbilt, Andrew Carnegie, and John D. Rockefeller seized these opportunities, building empires that fueled national expansion. Yet this was more than the triumph of a few. It was the triumph of an entire society adapting to unprecedented change. Urbanization surged as people flocked to cities in search of work. Immigrants arrived in waves, bringing labor, skills, and entrepreneurial spirit. Tenements, factories, and bustling markets became the heartbeat of industrial America, where hard work and ingenuity could translate into social mobility. The economy expanded, fueled by both domestic demand and international trade, establishing the United States as a major player in global commerce. At the same time, innovations in communication and finance accelerated growth. Telegraph lines, postal networks, and emerging banking systems created efficiency, trust, and interconnectedness. Policies protecting property rights and promoting enterprise encouraged investment, while new markets abroad offered unprecedented opportunity. The nation's abundant natural resources, coal, iron, timber, and oil, became engines of wealth, feeding both industry and export. Culturally, the idea of progress became a national ethos. Americans embraced innovation, risk-taking, and the belief that the nation's vast potential could be realized through vision and effort. Education, invention, and infrastructure combined to create a society capable of sustaining industrial dominance and fostering the economic foundations of a modern superpower. The industrial engine was running at full speed, but the story was far from complete. The 20th century would bring new challenges, global conflicts, and unprecedented opportunities, pushing America to claim its place as the richest nation in the world.
From the factories of the 19th century to the skyscrapers of the 20th, America's rise was relentless. But how did a nation forged in revolution and tested by hardship navigate world wars, economic crises, and global competition to emerge as the wealthiest country in history? The answers lie in innovation, resilience, and ambition on an epic scale. The 20th century marked the culmination of centuries of preparation. Industrialization had matured, and urban centers became hubs of commerce, technology, and culture. World Wars I and II, while devastating globally, positioned the United States as a dominant economic and military power. American industry supplied allies, innovated new technologies, and mobilized a workforce capable of unprecedented productivity. The post-war era brought consumerism, infrastructure expansion, and global trade networks that solidified national wealth. Government policies played a critical role. The New Deal stabilized a nation battered by the Great Depression, while initiatives like the GI Bill expanded education and home ownership, creating a skilled, productive middle class. Investment in science and technology, ranging from the space race to computing, spurred industries that transformed daily life and created new global markets. Corporations expanded, innovation flourished, and the United States emerged as a center for finance, media, and commerce. Simultaneously, cultural and social dynamics reinforced economic growth. Entrepreneurship, creativity, and the ideal of the self-made individual became central to the American identity. Immigration continued to infuse labor, talent, and ideas, ensuring a constant flow of human capital. Natural resources, technological leadership, and a stable political system allowed the U.S. economy to adapt, expand, and dominate international markets. By the late 19th century, America had become a global superpower, not only politically and militarily, but economically. Its wealth was the product of centuries of struggle, innovation, and foresight. The lessons of independence, nation-building, industrialization, and global ambition converged, creating a society capable of sustaining unmatched prosperity. From colonies struggling to survive, to a revolutionary nation, to an industrial giant and global leader, the United States' journey to wealth was neither simple nor inevitable. It was forged through resilience, vision, and an unyielding pursuit of opportunity. The richest country in the world was not born overnight. It was built,
century by century, by people daring to imagine what was possible. What did you think of this video about American history? If you enjoyed it, we regularly upload many informative and knowledge-based videos on this channel, so please consider subscribing to stay connected with us. Thank you for watching the video until the end.